Zion. Okay, so we're going to learn that a cholol is someone whose parents were kohen and a divorcee, for example, and lived in sin, so he is a cholol. As a cholol, what's the problem? He can marry he can marry a bas kohen, he can marry anybody. But the problem is that the cholol passes on the cholala to his daughter. The problem lands on the daughter that the daughter cannot marry a kohen. So if the father is a cholol, the daughter, this is 2 generations later, cannot marry a kohen. But if the mother is a chalala and the father is just an ordinary Yisrael, the chalal does not pass on to the next generation. So the father passes on the chalal and not the mother. That's what the Mishnah is going to be talking about. Bas chalal zacha, the daughter of a male chalal. Sulam and Akuna, the daughter of the next generation, cannot marry a kohen. La'olam, forever. We mean forever. It means, if, for example, this chalal had only sons. They're all chalalim. And they only had sons. It keeps on going down. And the first girl, it might be 10 generations further down the track, the first girl that comes along, she's a chalala, and she cannot marry a kohen. But then afterwards, if she marries a Yisrael, then her daughter, her children are no longer chalala. Says the Mishnah. Yisrael should not chalala. If Yisrael marries a woman who's a chalala, bitek shayla, the next generation is kosher, because the woman does not pass on the chalala. L'kuhuna. And then he repeats again. The Gemara will ask why. Cholol shenasa bas Yisrael, but the man, the father is a chol, marries a bas Yisrael. Bitei psul l'kuda. It passes on to the next generation that the daughter cannot marry a kohen. Now we're going to move over to a ger. If the father is a ger and the mother is a yid, how do we treat the daughter? Is she permitted to marry a kohen? We're going to have 3 opinions here. Rabbi Yehuda says, bas ger, just like the daughter of a chol, she's disqualified from marrying a kohen. So too the daughter of a ger, even though the mother is a full-fledged yid, she cannot marry a kohen. That's the view of Rabbi Yehuda. The view of bas ger zocher ke bas chol zocher. Okay, it has the same law as a chol. It goes after the male. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says no. As long as either parent is a full-fledged born Jew, there is no problem for the daughter to live with a kohen. Rabbi Yaakov, Yisrael should not say geyedis if Yisrael marries geyedis. Bitek shedel kuna. The daughter is kosher for kohen, and same thing is, or a ger should not say bas Yisrael. Bitek shedel kuna. Either parent is a Yisrael, the child is permitted to marry a kohen. But I'll agree. If both of them were converts, then then the daughter cannot marry a kohen. And it makes no difference whether a ger or echad avodim mishachrarim, whether you're a slave that was emancipated, afilu ad yud, even 10. If you have 10 generations, only males, and the 11th generation is a daughter, that daughter cannot marry a kohen. Ad shetei ima mi Yisrael, until eventually we have a Jewish woman. Rabbi Yeshi has a third opinion. He is much more lenient. He says, Av gesh and even a convert marries a convert. If the child was conceived after they became Jewish, so the child was conceived as Jews, she's allowed to marry a kohen. Now the Gemara will go through the Mishnah. First of all, what do you mean forever? And what do you have to tell me that for? I would have thought, a little before that, a Mitzri, there's only 2 generations forbidden. The 3rd generation, they can rejoin the Jewish nation. And same thing with Edom. So not after. And the 3rd generation, they're permitted to return. Kanami here too. The 3rd generation, they can come back. We would have thought so. Kamashlan is forevermore. As long as there are males, they continue passing down the cholol from one generation to the next until eventually we find the first woman child. Yisrael should not say chalola. How do you know? How do you know that if Yisrael that doesn't pass down from the mother to the daughter? It says here by a kohen gadol. It says don't marry a widow because if you do, you're going to desecrate your child. You're going to ruin your child. Be'amav in his nation. What do you mean his nation? Just say you ruin the child. So we use that word as extra. We can use it for Gzeira Shava. But it says by an ordinary kohen, he's not allowed to go to a cemetery. That he should not go to go ahead and contaminate, defile himself. And it says the same expression, be'amav in his nation. So in other words, we're equating a kohen gadol to an ordinary kohen, the laws of tumah. What do we know about the laws of tumah? It's only limited to a male. So too, who passes on the cholol to the next generation? Only a male. The male of any cave, not girls. It's males and not girls. Says the Gemara, following that logic, according to you. So bitish. Let's go back to the 1st generation. The kohen gadol lives with a widow and has a daughter. that daughter should be permitted to marry a kohen because you said it doesn't go down through the girls, it only goes down through the boys. Because we compare it to a kohen hedged by tumah. Tishrei, she should be permitted. So the Gemara says back, for that we have the wording in the pasuk is don't live with a widow, don't ruin your children. It doesn't say your son, it says your children, all inclusive, including your daughters. Miksi b'nai zarei do not desecrate your zarei. Says the Gemara, okay. So bas b'nai tishra, you just told me that the son is a chol, marries a Yiddish woman. The granddaughter is forbidden to a kohen, but why? Well, okay, the first generation I understand, but the second generation, it doesn't pass on to girls. It should only stay with boys. So why can't she marry a kohen the second generation? Tishrei, so when it answers, Ksiv, it says, Lo yechal zar oy. You could just say Lo yechal zera, means zar oy, to tell you that your children have the same status as you, just like you pass on the cholo to your daughter, so to your son passes on the cholo to his daughter. So the second generation cannot marry a kohen. Mak is Arale. Mahu beat Psula, his daughter's apostle. Abba beat Psula, his son also daughter apostle. Says, what if so? Is Bas beat Titzer. So by the same token, let's say that the granddaughter from the daughter's side, now the kohen is a widow, has a daughter, and the daughter has a second generation of daughter, granddaughter. She should also be forbidden, just like the daughter of the son. What's the difference? The daughter of the son, the daughter of the daughter. Says what was the point of Gzei Shava? The whole point of Gzei Shava limiting it to a boy when that it can pass through the son to a girl, but not pass through the girl to another girl. Then the Mishnah said, Chol Chol marries a Bas Yisrael, the daughter is possible. Saying nobody goes after the father. That's how the Mishnah started off. Why repeat it? Bas Chol, Gemara explains. You know why? Being poetic. Since the Mishnah says, first I want to ask, it says in the Mishnah, Bas Chol the daughter of the father of the Chol is also forever. Why repeat it? Saying I need a tonation because in the second case, in the beginning of the second case, it says that Yisrael should not say chalala. Yisrael marries a chalala. Therefore, the Sefer says also a chol who marries a bas Yisrael. Says the Gemara, so that's why it repeats itself. Just the flip side. Masnisin the Leikid Abdustoi ben Yehuda. Our Mishnah definitely does not conform with Rabbi Yehuda ben Yehuda, which we had a number of occasions previously in the Gemara. He holds it makes no difference if either the father or the mother are not chalalim, neither are the children. You in the Mishnah say if the mother is a halal, it doesn't pass on. But if the father is, it does. He says, no, it never passes on. The time if the father is a Yisrael, the chol ends right there and then doesn't pass down to the next generation. Same too if the mother is a non-chalol, the father is, it cleanses out, does not pass to the next generation. Our Mishnah obviously doesn't agree. Says he, what about time of what's his basis? Amakra says the pasuk, you shouldn't desecrate your children be'amav in his nation. One nation, but there are two people involved, the father and the mother, the Kohen Gadol and the widow. What do you mean in one nation? You know when is a chol? Only if they're both on the same page. They're both, he's a chol and she's a chol, then the children become chalolim. But if the father is a chol and the mother isn't, no, the next generation, the son of this Kohen Gadol, if he marries a Bas Yisrael, so then one of them is clean and one of them isn't, that doesn't pass on chalolim. Tanna we learned. Lo yichal zara, you shouldn't desecrate your children. Ainly elazare. All we know from that pasuk is that if you live, a kohen gadol lives with a widow, the children are ruined, the chalalim. But how do you know the widow herself is ruined, that she cannot marry a kohen in the future if her husband dies? He atzam and I. How do you know? Says it makes sense. The child who never did aveda. Yet mischal, yet what? The child is a chol. Who sha'avra aveda? He. The mother, who she committed the sin. The child is an innocent victim, and yet he's a cholol. Surely the mother was a participant in the sin. Surely she should become a chol. In addition, that she should become a chol. Says you want to know. What about the husband? The kohen gadol himself, or the kohen head that marries a divorcee, they don't become chalolim. As long as he's married to a woman that's in sin, he's not allowed to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. But the moment he divorces her or she dies, whatever, and he proves to us that he makes a neder, he'll never do it again. He goes right back to work. He hasn't been transformed at all as a chol. So it proves clearly, even though he was involved in the sin just as much as she was, yet he is not a chol. So how do we know that the mother becomes a chalola? Who asked me here? He committed a sin. Aim is chal. Said no. Maluhu shekain aim is chal b'chamakim. You know why? By him, she'aim is chal. He never becomes a chol. If the kohen had to live with the grusha, he doesn't become a chol. No kohen ever becomes a chol. or he lives in a chalala. So, but that was sorry, with a zaina. Taime bihi, she was chalala chalakim. She, no matter who she lives with, he becomes a chalal. The you can ask me a strong question, which Gemara will explain to me what that is. The pasuk says it says lo yechalel zare, double lamed. It's superfluous. Could have just said lo yachel zare. Why double lamed? Lo yichulo. Lo yechal double lamed means lo yichulo. What do you mean lo yichulo? Somebody who was till now good, don't ruin it now. Zeh shehaya kosher in his chal. I mean, obviously, we're not talking about the child. The child was born a chol from the first day. So must be talking about the mother. She started out being a kosher woman, and now she married the Kohen Gadol. She's no longer kosher. What question? What possible question did you have that we need to respond? We can ask. I would have thought that the child was born from an aveda. Makes sense as a chol. Why should the mother be a chol? That's why the pasuk says there's two chalalim in it. The child was born, but the mother who participated in the sin. And referring to zesh in his chal. You're taking someone that was good and you're ruining it. That's what we learned. It says in the Bryce the following: who is considered a chalola? Kol shenoldim min absulim, born from someone that's disqualified, they shouldn't have married. Now we don't know yet what we're talking about. My psulim, what are we talking about? Ilay psulim loy, somebody that the father should never have married. Not do with Kohen. Yisrael. Who should the father have married? For example, he divorced his wife, she married somebody else, got divorced from that, or became widow, and now she wants to go back to the first husband. You're not allowed to. But if they do, according to what you're saying right now, that daughter should be a halala. She should not be able to marry a kohen. No such thing. He's not allowed to take back his divorced wife. And the children definitely can marry a kohen. Receive ta'eva he ta'eva. She's an abomination. So what do you mean when he says if a child is born from psul? You know when you become a chol? Only if the avera that the parents did has to do with being a kohen. The father had to be a kohen, and he lived with someone that a kohen cannot live with, and therefore the child is a chol. Does the Gemara? But then in the Brisa says, "Kol shel nolda mim psul kuhuna." It sounds like only if they were born from a marriage that shouldn't have taken place, they're chalal. But the mother, she does not become a chol. No, the in no the loy. If you weren't born, let's say the mother who wasn't born, she now committed a sin. You tell me she's not a chalala. Hari almana, grusha, zaina, all of these people, the loy no, they weren't born that way. They became the chalala became a chalala. So Amar Rabba said, let's understand the Bryce as follows: Ezi chalala muskeres. Which chalala is actually mentioned in the Torah? Cloud never had a moment that they were kosher from birth. Anyone who was born from parents that were, father was a kohen and they lived together with a kohen, a kohen shouldn't be living with. And mine was what do you mean mentioned in the Torah? It's written in the Torah. You don't even have to bother explaining it. It's pretty clear in the Torah exactly. It says halal lo yikachu. You know exactly what it means. And if you take a halal, you ruin the kid from the beginning. Because it says by Kohen Gadol, the children that you will give birth to will be halalim. It's just clear in the Torah. That's what the Brisa means. Born from something of disqualification that applies only to Kohen. So what we learned? The following cryptic Brisa. Almana. If this woman was an almana 3 times, he committed only one sin. Grusha. If this woman was a divorcee 3 times, only chayv one sin. What happens if you follow the following sequence? Almana, then she became a widow, then she became a grusha divorcee, then she became a chalala. She lived with a kohen she shouldn't have lived with. Then she became a zoina. Bismam shehem kisei. You follow this particular sequence. Chayiv al kol achas. You chayiv for each sin. There's 4 sins there. You're chayiv for being an almana, a grusha, chalala, and a zoina. But since if you reverse the order, first she was mezana, and then when it's chalala, then she became a chol. And then when it's gash, she's divorced. Then it's amula, only chayiv 1. That's what the Brisa says. Let's explain. What do you mean you only chayiv for 1 sin? What are we talking about? Then almana Shimon. He married 3 different almanas. One Reuben's widow, Shimon's widow, and Levi's widow. So why is only considered as 1 sin? Had a Gufim Mechalak, three different people. Shem is Mechalak, three different names, because each one is a widow from a different man. So why is only one sin? So what it means must be El Shabo Almana Acha Shos Bias. He had relations with one widow three times. Again, Heichada, what are we talking about? Either Asabe, they only warned him once, because you don't get lashes, you don't get punished unless you were warned. So they only warned him once. Then surely Pshita the Chayv one. Ela the Asrube, I'll call Chad. They must have warned him for each time they had relations with this widow. Why only committed one sin? But now didn't we learn? He was after Nazir. Nazir Shaisi Yan Kalim Kulu. We had a Nazir drank wine all day long. He was imbibing wine. He only committed one sin. But if they told him, I'll teach don't drink. Well, who shaisa, and he kept on drinking. Every warning he's chayiv for. We needed Reuven. What happened was, there was one woman. She was married to Reuven. Reuven died. She then married Shimon. Shimon died. She then married Levi. Levi died. So there's one woman, but she's a widow three times over. So when you live with her, the Kohen lives with her, how many sins has he committed? Kohen Gadol, how many sins has he committed? One, because it's one person, or three, because she is three times an almana. This woman was the widow of Reuben, the widow of Shimon and Levi. I would have thought that three different shemus. Each time she's a widow for a different reason. It's only one person, so therefore you only get one punishment. Now let's go to the next part. The Mishnah said if you follow this sequence, first she's a widow and then so on and so forth, you'll get four punishments. But if you do reverse it, you don't. What's going on here? Hi Tana. Now remember we had a discussion. There's a thing called whether Isser Chal al Isser. So for example, a nevela, a carcass. The nevela died before Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, you ate that nevela. So the nevela was already in Avera. Do you also get the Avera of Yom Kippur or not? If you hold one Isser cannot be compound, cannot fall on another Isser, then the only Avera you did was eating nevela, not Yom Kippur. But if you hold Isser Chalal Isser, then you had two Averas there, Treif, nevela, and Yom Kippur. Then we had an opinion that says even though ain't Isser Chalal Isser, that it cannot fall on another Isser, but if the second Isser is more comprehensive, another layer of Isser, then something new happened, then it will fall on the Isser. So now we're most trying to understand why. If you go one particular way, we'll say, well, one Isser, they all add up. The cumulative, you'll get four Avedas, you get four punishments. But if you do the other way, you get nothing. Which way? What's the difference? So you might ask like this. I don't understand. Hi, Tana Mike. So this Tana, what is his opinion? Ikas of Isachal Isser, one Isser does fall on another Isser, then Ivchanami. Then it should be the other way around. The Ikas of an Isachal Isser, and if you hold that one Isser does not fall on another Isser, then I feel like he says a Namiloi. Then even this order also not. Omar Rava says Rava. Hi Tana, this Tana holds Isser Cholal Isser Leslie. You're right. He doesn't believe in Isser Cholal Isser, but Isser Moisiv Isla. If it's another layer or it's more comprehensive, it affects more people. Then since the other layer was there before, so the other layer will be effective, is activated, and once that's activated, the rest of it is activated as well. So Almana Asura Kohen widow is limited only to Kohen Gadol. If then after if a Shaygan Hedget. Then Havila Grusha, then she married somebody who became a divorcee. Now a divorcee is now also to all Kohanim. So he added another layer. Once it was added to an ordinary Kohen, we already added to a Kohen Gadol as well. Okay, so that's, you committed now two sins. She is a widow, and now she's also a divorcee. Then, but even a divorcee, if she then marries a Kohen, she's allowed to eat truma. However, then she became a chalala. When she became a chalala, sorry, now she marries a kohen, she's not allowed to. But if she was the daughter of a kohen and then she was divorced, she goes back home and she eats truma. But if she then became a chalala, chalala does not go back home to eat truma. So that adds another layer. Since you add another layer, she can no longer eat truma. Added also the kohen gadol. What does Zaina add? A Zaina is forbidden only to an ordinary kohen, so nothing more than a grusha. What does it add? So why should she get malchus for being a Zaina? And come up a new idea. The shame is nuz paisa b'Yisrael. You're right. there is nothing that Zoina adds. But the word Zoina is also used for other things. For example, a Yisrael, and he's married to a woman and she commits adultery. She's called a Zoina. And therefore, since the name Zoina is more is applies to people outside of Kohanim, outside the tribe of Kohanim. Therefore, it's considered like adding another layer, even though it's not relevant to this case here. But the name Znus is a stricter sin. It's like another layer, and therefore you committed 4 sins. But if you reverse the order, once you're a Zaina, there's nothing else to be added on. The Torah says it by a Kohen Gadol. It says by Kohen Gadol, you should not take a widow, a divorcee, or a halala, or a Zaina. He should not take these, but he should take his psula. It says the psula ma'am of yikachisha. So the Gemara learns as follows: Koshu be yikach, any girl that if she would have been a psula young girl, he could have married had a bla yikach. If he takes her as a widow, whatever it is, he's committing a sin. But if you couldn't have married her regardless, then then even if you married her when you shouldn't have, you don't get the punishment of la yikach. What are we talking about? Prat le kohen gadol shebo ala choyse almana. Kohen gadol marries his sister as a widow. Now his sister he can never marry, and because his sister can never marry, so even though he committed a sin for living with the sister, which is Isa of Karis, he will not get punished for also living with a widow. Why? Because there's no yikach over here. Because you cannot take his sister as a wife. Says the Gemara. So he'll only get malchus for being the sister. He won't get malchus at all for living with a widow. Who does this follow? It seems like it follows of Shimon, who says, Ein Isa Chal Iser. Again, it sounds like the Iser of Almana does not get added on to the Iser of a sister because one Iser does not fall on another Iser. The time of Shimon, if you ain't Level Yom Kippur, Potter, you don't get punished for Yom Kippur. If the rabbis, they say Isa does, they hold that an Isa does fall on another Iser. So according to them, if he marries his sister who's a widow, he will get punished for being a widow as well, from living with a widow. Says no. I feel Tamer Rabbanan. You can argue that the Rabbanan will agree when it comes to a Kohen Gadol, he will not get punished for a widow. Why not? How's that different than Yom Kippur? When the Rabbanan say one Isa falls on another Isa, Yom Kippur on top of an Avela. Yom Kippur is a very strict Isa. So they say that it falls on the Isa of the Avela, it's only on Avera, a lot. Not living with the sister is a very strict issue. You get chorus. Not a Kohen Gadol with an Amana is only a lav. Even the Rabbanan that the Isser of Amana does not fall on top of the Isser of sister. That's one version. You can have another version is Hamani Rabbanan. In fact, this law that says that he does not get punished for her sister being a widow follows the Rabbanan. What do you mean? They hold generally Isser Chalisa. When did the Rabbanan say a stringent Isser on a weak Isser? But a weak Isser on a stringent Isser, loichayil is not chal. Now, and must be that this din of Yikach must conform with the Rabbanan, not Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon agrees that you don't get punished for widow. But according to Reb Shimon, you wouldn't need a pasuk. It's obvious. One Isser does not fall on another Isser. It's only the rabbis who need a pasuk. He holds that a strict Isser like Yom Kippur does not fall on a light Isser like Nevela. You need to tell me that a light Isser of Almana does not fall on a strict Isser of Achaisai. No, it's the rabbis. We say that an Isser's Chal Isser need this pasuk to tell you, but over here it's not Chal because this is a light Isser that doesn't go on. No, maybe it is a Shemichai, but we would have thought that the laws of Kohen are so strict that we go way beyond the general rules, and maybe a Kohen also should be punished for Almana. Kamashlan that you don't. Tell you what further. Yisrael for Yisrael lives with his sister, which is obviously Yisrael Koris. Zoyne Mashle. So obviously he turns his sister into Zoyne, and this sister now marries a Kohen. Remember, if any woman who lives even once with somebody that she cannot marry, she becomes a Zoyne. So this woman, his sister, if she marries a Kohen, she'll be punished as a Zoyne. Does she also become a Chalola? And if she becomes a Chalola, then she loses another Kohen, he'll get punished twice, or not. Says the Gemara. Do we say Kavachayim Mechayavi Lavin? I make a Kavachayim. Chayavi Lavin have a Chalola. She committed merely a lav. If she lives with somebody that's merely a sin alav, she becomes a chalala. She cannot marry a kohen. Now she's living with her brother. This is a terrible sin. Krisis, like kolshkein. Surely she should not be able to live with a kohen, or it should be an additional sin. She can't live with a kohen anyway. She's a zaina, but it should be two sins now. Or perhaps ein chalala elam isakuna. In order to be a halal, it has to be only something that is usher to a kohen. We're not talking about a zaina now. A zaina, she lives with anybody one night with a goy. But to become a halal, it has to be only from an avera that's specific for kohenim, and living with a sister is nothing to do with kohenim. That's a general avera for everybody. Amalei said, "A halal isakuna b'vad." Abaye answered, "Only isakuna." And Rava chimes in, Amar Rava, and I'll support Abaye. How do we talk to know this? A halal isakuna. How do we know it's only a sin from kuna? The time we learned. The Torah says a Kohen Gadol should not marry a widow. That's something novel because a Kohen Hedjed can. And then he adds not a divorcee, not a Chalala, not a Zaina. And you have to wonder, if a Kohen Hedjed cannot marry these women, surely a Kohen Gadol cannot marry. Why in the world does the Torah have to highlight Grusha and Chalala and Zaina? Why repeat it? Learn from a Kohen Hedjed. Now I would say, if a Kohen Hedjed cannot marry these women, you tell me a Kohen Gadol can marry. Lama Nemra, why does it say? To tell you the following. Just like by Kohen Hedjed, the Torah said separately, don't marry the divorcee. And separately it says, don't marry a Zayn and a Chalala. To tell you that for each one you get a separate punishment. So therefore, we put the Gerusha Chalal by Kohen Gadol. Tell you that if you have a woman that has all four of these sins, you'll get four punishments. Thinking about a pshita migra gora, isn't that obvious? Why it should be less than a Kohen Hedjed? It's to tell you that just like Gerusha is separate from Zaina and Halal. It's a separate sin altogether. You might think that you have to be both in order to be considered sin. No, we say it's totally separate. So, because it says the title of Isha, Grusha, Meisha, and so on and so forth. So you'll get punished even though she's a Grusha and a Zaina Halal. You get punished each one separately. So same thing by Kohen Gadol. So the Gemara, Kach Amana Chaluka Megrusha v'Chalala Zaina. The Kohen Gadol. So when I ask Chalala Lama Nemra, okay, that explains why it says there Grusha. To tell you that each one is separate from the next. Why do you have to repeat Chalala? Just say Grusha. I already know. Why is it repeated? To tell you that each one is a separate sin. But why does it say Chalala? Ain Chalala Elam Isakuna. Teach you that Chalala can only happen from a if she lived with someone in sin that's a sin that only applies to Kohenim. Zaina Lama Nemra. Why repeat Zaina? Never comes Zaina here by Kohen Gadol says Zaina, never Lahalan Zaina. And it says by a Kohen Hedjed Zaina. Ma kan Zara Choylin, after Lahalan Zara Choylin. Just like by Kohen Gadol. How do we know the children become Chalalim? We know that from a Kohen Gadol. And we make this equation, Zaina, tell you that an ordinary Kohen also, if he lives with a woman he shouldn't be living with, the children are Chalalim. Amar Rashi says, therefore, Kohen Abala Chayse, if a Kohen lives with his sister, Zaina Mashvale. He doesn't make her halal because it's not a law about kohenim. It's every Jew's not allowed to live with his sister, so he only makes her into a zayna. But then, if he lives the next night again with her, now that he's living with her as a zayna, then zayna mashal halal mashal. But chazar now that he lives with her as a zayna, that's only a sin for a kohen. So now she becomes a halal. Also halal, he turned into halal. I'm going to be almost finished. Rabbi Yehuda says kohen gadol ba'amana like shtayim. Rabbi Yehuda says a kohen gadol with almana gets two punishments. Achas mishum yikach, it says in almana you shouldn't take, and the achas mishum yichal, and it says in the pasuk and don't ruin her. So two sins. Says the Gemara v'lil kinam mishum yichal zari. You share a third sin for ruining his kids. Talking about a case where he didn't consummate, so therefore there won't be any kids. Just a few more lines. Masiv Rama asks a question. Almana grusha like him shnei shemes. It's clearly the almana grusha they get malchus for two different names. My love. Shnei shemes, they only get one for widow and one for divorcee. If he lived with somebody as a widow divorcee, he gets two punishments. And according to you, there should be four. Because each one it says yikach, it says yichalom. V'sulai. Says no, loy shnei shemes, he gets two punishments, one for widow, one for divorce, but each one comes with two. One for what do you call it? For yikach and one for yichalom. Shnei shemas hazeh v'shnei shemas hazeh. Yihachiv so emes sefer. Look at the end where it says grusha v'chalutza l'chayv alachas. If she was a divorcee and a chalutza, you don't get punished for chalutza because it's not really forbidden in the Torah, and you only get one. Again, it sounds like only one. You only get punished for one of them, but really you're getting two. And you get two punishments. The chalutza, the rabbanon, chalutza is only from the rabbanon. That's why you don't get malchus. The tanya grusha ain't the grusha. Chalutza minayin. How do you know? Tamlei v'isha. So when I ask a question, what do you tell me from the rabbanon? We bring a pasuk. It says v'isha mish. And as if there's two ways that she can be that she can leave her husband. But the rabbanon across the balma. It's only